Bethany, for all of you who don't know. I go to school at UCA, so I just get to come in the summer sometimes, and Pastor Joe's always so great to me. And I just love getting to hang out with y'all. I mean, y'all are just so, y'all want it, y'all get it, and so it's exciting. But this has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm going to talk about, but it's probably one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever gotten, and I just got it this summer, and it is better to be married to the right person for 40 years than the wrong person for 45. And that is so key for our age, me especially, all of you girls. I know it's really hard for us because we're like, oh, I'm getting to be 20, I'm getting to be 25, I'm getting to be 30. What's happening, God? But you know what? I would rather be married to the right guy for even 10 years than the wrong one for 80. You know what I mean? So just wait on God. He has a great plan. So back to this. Like I was saying before, I was trying to think, okay, God, what is the greatest life lesson? What do these people need to hear? You know, what have you done in my life that would be applicable for y'all? Because you get it. I mean, you love God. That's why you're here. Nobody's making you come here. This is a Thursday night. It's not Sunday. It's not like youth group where your parents are making you come to church. This is a Thursday night that you've given up. Most of you probably have work tomorrow or school. But you're here because you love God, and you're willing to stay until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, however late y'all stay, because you want it. You want more of God. And so just this morning, I had a message, and I was just like, I don't like this. I got up at like 6:30 this morning, and I just went for a run, and I was just like, okay, God, just help me. So I was running, and I ran into my coach when I was running, my old track coach. And so I saw her, and I was like, hey. And, we talked, caught up a little bit, and then I kept running, and I was just like thinking about it, and I was like, back in high school, we used to say this verse, and it is from 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you not know that all who run in a race run, but only one receives the prize? So run in such a way that you may obtain it. And I was thinking about that verse, and I was like, okay, in high school, you're working out all the time, 4 hours a day pretty much. That was your life. If you were in athletics, that was your life. And, the reason that they make you run all the time is so that you're going to win, obviously, so that when you run out of endurance, you're going to win. Well, what it's turned into now, for me anyways, if I'm going to run, it's because I'm like, oh, I need to start running a little bit. I've been eating too much. And it's all about, my outside appearance. And I was like thinking about it, and I was like, one thing that I learned this summer, I just got back from 9 weeks in Destin, just, learning about God and just really just growing in my relationship with him and taking ownership of my love with him. But one thing that I learned was that so often I got so caught up in the outside appearance of my Christianity and just the outside appearance of my relationship with God. And I feel like that's the biggest stumbling block. Like, yeah, y'all are here. You love God. You get it. You're going to all these conferences. You're doing all these things on campus. And it's hard for me to see this, anywhere else that I go, but you guys get it. But, you have to be so careful, because if you get so caught up in the outside appearance of, of leading girls and leading guys and, doing campus church, and if you get so caught up in the connection and it becomes where you start to lose God, where it's just an outside appearance of it, it's pointless. Because people are just going to call you fake, and they're going to call you, sacrilegious, and they're going to say all these things about you, and it's not going to reach them. It's not going to get to the heart of people. I know for me, I grew up in church my whole life. I loved God, and, I did all the right things on the outside. I was, I led RPM in my school. I did, I was prayed before the volleyball games, whatever. And then, I went to school, and the second I lost my church family, and the second that I lost, the standards for my youth group, I was lost. Thank God that I didn't, fall into partying and fall into all of that stuff. But I completely just forgot who I was. I would go to church, and I would just sit there the whole time thinking about, oh, my gosh, this church, they're just a show. Oh, my gosh, this pastor, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Oh, my gosh, I've been coming here for 6 weeks, and nobody even knows my name. And I would just sit there every service and judge them, judge how their church didn't compare to my church. And how their college ministry was nothing compared to the college ministry back home. And, I just do this all the time. And this summer, God said, it's not about the church. It's about your relationship with me. You are the church. And when you stop being the church, I can't use you. When you stop taking ownership of, God, this is my relationship with you. Use me how you want. This has nothing to do with Church on the Rock. This has nothing to do with the connection. When I go to Conway, it's still the same God. It's still the same me. God still uses me in the same way. But the second that I forget that, I'm nothing. So that's the big stumbling block. We needed to be living our lives in order to obtain that ultimate prize that I was talking about earlier. It's not just about looking good on the outside. It's about obtaining that ultimate prize. And that ultimate prize is to bring God the glory he deserves. So how do we do that? John 4:34 says, Jesus said to them, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work." Jesus said that. So what is his will? Well, that's found in Matthew 28:19. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Was God saying, hey, when you feel like it, will you go make disciples? No, he said, go therefore and make disciples. It is a command. So if he's saying, go therefore and make disciples, is it not the same thing as do not murder? Is he commanding us not to murder? He's not just asking us, right? So he's commanding us. So if we do murder, it's a sin, right? So if we don't go and make disciples, it's a sin because he says, go and make disciples. So one thing he asks us to do. And if we aren't doing it, what are we doing with our lives? If we're just, inviting people to church and, telling them about God one time and then be like, okay, well, I'm going to go over here and go to my conference. What is that going to do? Or I'm going to go over here and have my quiet time by myself. And we just leave them out to dry. No, he says, go and make disciples. God is too smart to ask us to do something that we are already doing. So he commands us to do things that take us out of our comfort zone. He commands us to go and make disciples. So as you're living your life, as you're going, you're supposed to be making disciples. You're not just supposed to be being a good Christian. You're not supposed to just be being an awesome worshiper. You're not supposed to just be going to every conference that you hear about. No, you're supposed to be going and making disciples, bringing girls with you, bringing guys with you, living life with these people. In the original King James translation, the word Christian is used 3 times in the Bible. The word revival is used 0 times in the Bible. And the word disciple is used once in the Old Testament and 268 times in the Old Testament. So the word Christian's used 3, revival's used 0, but disciple is used 269 times. Think about that. Obviously, it was important to God, right? If he, said it 269 times. And 268 of those is when Jesus was making disciples. So Jesus did it. Obviously, we're supposed to do it because we're supposed to imitate Jesus, right? That's what our life's supposed to be like. We're supposed to be living like Jesus. Matthew 9:37 says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. So what do we want? We want to see our friends and our family and all the people that we love, well, not just the people that we know, but everyone come to Christ. We want to see our friends and our family released from that bondage of sin, right? So if we want to see the harvest, we must sow. So we had to read this book this summer, and it was called Fuel in the Flame by Steve Shadrach. And I'm going to read you about a couple of college students that got it, that got the purpose that God gave them, which is to go and make disciples, right? And they did something about it. A few quotes from the book. The last 250 years of Protestant missions from the West have been sustained primarily by college students. They have provided most of the manpower to fulfill the Great Commission from the 18th to the 21st century. Almost 1/4 of the world's college students reside in North America, and they represent the most reachable, recruitable, trainable, and sendable category of persons on the planet. At what other point in our life are we, for the most part, single? I mean, you may be in a relationship, but you're not married, so you can go and you can have girls stay the night with you, or you can have guys living with you. At what other time in our life are we, in school and we're getting to learn all of this knowledge that we can share with others? No other time, After this, we get married and we have kids and we have responsibilities, and it's a lot harder to, pour your life into somebody else. In the early 1800s, God used a group of 7 young men, and they were college students in England. They were called the Cambridge 7 to ignite the most effective mobilization effort of all time, the student volunteer movement. These 7, 2 of which were famous athletes and 2 of which were military officers, so pretty big guys, they helped catapult a little-known China inland mission. So what they did basically was they decided that, okay, we're going to devote our life to go to China. And they went to this little bitty missions agency called the China Inland Mission Agency, and they devoted their life to it. So, but before they left, they went for a year to the British Isles and just went around trying to inspire college students just to catch the vision of, making disciples of all nations and the evangelization of the world. And in that year, the CIM had already signed up 163, by the time they got to China, so in that year, the China Inland Missions Agency signed up 163 people from their tour. Within another year, it doubled in size. And then by the year 1900, there was 800 missionaries because of these 7 guys going to China. And that made up, at that time, 1/3 of the Protestant missionary force. So it started with 7 and it led to 800. Well, then in 1886, just months after the Cambridge 7 sailed to China, D.L. Moody, the same guy who discipled those 7 guys from earlier, he went to a conference. It was a month-long conference with 251 men from 89 different universities. God used Moody and other men to ignite the crowd, and 100 students gave themselves to a life of cross-cultural missions called the Mount Hermon 100. These 100 became the student volunteer movement, which was started by the Cambridge 7. It was their foundation. And from those 100 men, 100,000 students, from these 100, so it started with the 7. Well, actually, it started with one, D.L. Moody, who poured into 7 men, who then poured into 100. And then from that 100 came 100,000 students who said, I will give my life up. They signed a declaration saying, God, if you want me to go, I will go. From that 100,000, 20,000 actually went to China, and 80,000 stayed behind and formed the laymen's missionary movement, which basically means they supported and they became mobilizers. Some of the original 100 obviously became mobilizers and stayed back. They created this motto that added on to the original Cambridge 7's book. It says, the evangelization of the world in this generation. So there was one man, which led to 7, which led to 100, which led to 100,000 students within 40 years. Think about what we could do. Revelation 7:9 says, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every tribe, from all nations and peoples and languages, standing before the throne of God and standing before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands and crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. That will come to pass. One day, every tribe, every nation, every tongue will give God the glory that he deserves. They will worship him, and they will stand before him, and hopefully we will all be there worshiping God and giving him that glory. And it'll happen. The question is, are you going to help it? Are you going to be a part of it? Being a Christian isn't going to help that come to pass. Coming here every Thursday isn't going to help that come to pass. Going to campus church and helping do some of the behind-the-scenes stuff it'll help, but it's not going to make the difference that we need. Going and making disciples is what is going to make that difference. God is not asking us. He is commanding us to make disciples. We are so blessed to be here right now. Some of you, I know, you heard Kendall's earlier. You feel rejected. You feel insecure. And the only reason you're here is to feel a little bit better about yourself because Christians are supposed to be nice. But God, you are here for a reason. You know about God for a reason. There are people in other countries who are never going to hear about God. And they're going to die. And they're never going to hear about him, but you get to hear it. We hear it all the time. And we're in the Bible Belt, you know. You heard it in kindergarten. You heard it in high school. Even when people are trying to say, oh, I don't believe in God, you still heard about him. You know who he is. We're here. We know what we're supposed to do. So how much are you willing to give to Jesus? To give means to freely transfer the ownership of something. Freely transfer it. Matthew 16:24 said, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Jesus expects us to give up everything. And just like Paul said in Romans 1:16, we cannot be ashamed. Paul was not ashamed. We are not ashamed of the gospel because it is the power of God for the salvation of all who believe, first for the Jew, then for the Gentile. It is not in the messenger. The power is not in the messenger. I heard that over and over this summer. It's in the message. And all we have to do is tell it. That's all we have to do. It's so easy just to go. And we tell a girl, you know, that you may not know, but you know that she's lost. You see her in class every day, and you know that she's just dying inside because maybe her parents just got a divorce, or she's never even had a dad or a mom, and her boyfriend just broke up with her, or she's pregnant. I mean, you know, you see it every day. You know what's going on. And all you got to do is go talk to her. Invite her to lunch one time. Even easier, invite her to Connection. She'll meet God. She'll find him. But all you do is invite her to lunch one time. You tell her about God. You share the gospel. It's easy through your testimony. Then you start meeting up with her. You have a quiet time with her. You teach her what it means. Because most people, I know it's crazy, don't know how to read their Bible. They may not even own a Bible. You read your Bible with them. You pray with them. You start telling them everything you know. You start inviting them on Thursdays and on Sundays and on Wednesdays and every time the church doors open. And they start to grow this heart for God and this heart for serving and just giving. And that's all you do. You invite them to conferences so they get on fire and they feel that spark and they're around other people that get it. The power is from God. It is not from you. It's easy, I promise. You don't have to know a single thing. All you have to know is what God did in your life. All you know is Jesus was born from a virgin. He lived a perfect sinless life. He died on the cross for our sins, and he rose again. And one day we'll come back. That's all you have to know. The power is in the message. Yes, people may be rude and treat you different sometimes. Yes, you will be rejected. But Jesus was hated. He was rejected. He was killed on the cross. Jesus was loved and hated, but never ignored. The second you start making disciples and you start pouring your life into girls, yeah, they're going to get mad. Or guys, sorry. Not every guys don't pour into girls. It's not probably that good. But anyways, the second you start pouring your life out and you start, just giving yourself to somebody else and just letting them know everything that God has given you, that's when their life's going to be changed. So what do we want to see? We want to see our friends changed, our friends released from that bondage of sin, so that one day God will see that glory that he deserves. I learned this illustration, and it's the difference between addition and multiplication. So let's say that I became some awesome preacher, and I was like Billy Graham, and I went, and in 1 year, I preached to 1,000 people. I preached, and 1,000 people became to Christ. So we have 1,000 new believers, and let's remember, when we were all new believers, we didn't really know how to read our Bible. We probably didn't read our Bible. We didn't know how to pray always. We were just it was kind of like the shallow prayers, you remember what it was like to be a new believer. So let's say I had 1,000 of those. Let's say in the second year, I led another 1,000 new believers to the Lord. So then we have 2,000 new believers. Third year, another 1,000, and it just keeps going on. So third year, I have 3,000. 10th year, I have 10,000. I mean, how incredible. 10,000 people are now in the kingdom of God because, it's one girl's preaching. And so after 33 years, how many do we have? 33,000, exactly. So that's pretty incredible, right? Jesus lived 33 years. If, the next 33 years, you're like, I'm gonna share the gospel with 33,000 people. That's pretty awesome, right? Okay. Now let's say for 1 year, I said, I'm going to pour my life into Betsy. I just made that up. Say, I'm going to pour my life into Betsy. And for 1 year, I teach her everything I know. I teach her how to have a quiet time, how to love God, how to worship him with everything in her. And after that year, she knows everything that I know, and she's ready to pour her life into somebody else. So year 2, I pour my life into Jewel, and she pours her life into Jane. And so now we have, she's pouring into somebody, I'm pouring into somebody. And so after that second year, we have 4 girls who not only are new believers, but they get it. They see the vision. They found that vision, and they're becoming disciple makers. And they want other girls. They want to see girls that are on fire and that are going out to the nations and that are going, you don't have to go to Europe or Africa to fulfill the Great Commission. All you got to do is go to the school. They're everywhere. So anyways, after year 2, we have 4 girls, 4 disciple makers. After year 3, it multiplies. So first year 2, second year 4. Third year, we have 8 girls that are disciple makers, and they're on fire. And, every year we're pouring into somebody new. Only one person each you're pouring into, and it's 8 girls that know, they get it. Well, after 33 years, just trust me, we would have 6.5 billion disciple makers. Not just 33,000 new believers who don't even read their Bible half the time and who still probably drink on the weekends. No, 6.5 billion disciple makers who get it. I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty sure that every tribe, nation, tongue would have heard about it by then, right? And that's just giving your life up to one person a year. If we all did that starting this year, we would be in heaven in 3. And I'm just saying, it's worth it. It's worth it to give up your time. It's worth it to give it up because God said, go and make disciples. That's the one thing he asked us to do. And it's so easy. It's not that easy, actually. It's going to take effort. It's going to take cost, but it's worth it to do what God has commanded us to do. So don't get caught up in your rejection. Don't get caught up in the numbers and the outward appearance of being a Christian. Just adopt the mindset of I'm going to be a disciple maker. At every time in your life, at every instant, you should be able to say, who is my Paul? Who's discipling me? And who is my Timothy? Who am I pouring my life into? I'm going to leave you with a quote. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? It's one of the most powerful quotes I've ever heard, and it stuck with me for about the last 2 months because that's when I heard it. So I encourage you, think about it. Write it on your mirror. If not me, then who? If not now, then when?